Hello and welcome to 1A. I can represent a three-dimensional figure with isographic and orthographic drawings. In this lesson, we're going to learn about how to draw three-dimensional figures two-dimensionally through two commonly used methods. The first is an isometric drawing. And an isometric drawing is a two-dimensional diagram that shows a corner view of a three-dimensional object, usually showing the front, right, and top. Isometric drawings are done on isometric paper. You guys are used to using graph paper, which is really paper formed by tessellating squares over and over again. Well, isometric paper is formed by tessellating equilateral triangles over and over again and then getting rid of the lines. So as you can see here, this picture represents the isometric paper before we remove the lines, and the one next represents it after. Now, why is this paper helpful? Well, it helps me make figures with dimension more easily. If I asked you guys to draw a cube in your minds, you'd probably start drawing perfect rectangles and perfect squares. The problem is that it's really hard to show dimension with just a perfect rectangle. What I can do with this dot paper is it lets me create dimension really quickly. So here, I'm able to create a cube with ease. And it looks vaguely three-dimensional. Now, if I could get my pen to behave properly, it would look even better, but it's pretty easy to draw any three-dimensional picture on this paper. I want you guys now to take your pencils and try to draw a stack of 2 blocks, just like I'm attempting to do right now, on your paper. Mimic me if you need to. But just practice drawing a stack of 2 blocks, just like that. Now, there's some key things about isometric drawing that you need to keep in mind. The first is we only draw a line if we can physically see that line in the view that we're thinking of. We also only draw lines if there's a change in depth or height. So, for example, I didn't draw a line there because there was no change in depth between those 2 blocks. So as you can see in this diagram down here, we've got a lovely isometric drawing, and there's no line drawn there because there's no change in depth. Just like I don't draw lines here because there's no change in depth. And we can't see the bottom, rear, back block of this drawing, so we don't even draw it. What I want you guys to do now, I'm going to pause the video real quick and show you a figure I want you to draw, and I want you all now to draw the figure in the space below. All right, guys, now let's take a look at orthographic drawing. Like isometric, orthographic drawing helps us represent three-dimensional figures accurately, but unlike isometric drawing, orthographic drawings don't need special paper. It makes it a lot easier. However, I think visualizing orthographic drawing is harder. We draw orthographic drawings by showing 3 straight-on views of one object. We typically show the top, front, and right view of this object, and we're going to draw basically the layout of it. So for example, I've got this lovely figure over here. It looks like 2 blocks stacked on top of each other sitting in front of an L of blocks. Well, if I'm looking straight down on that figure, what I've got is I've got a tower, which is designated by this block right here, and then I've got the L, which is this right here. We only draw edges where there's a change in depth, and we draw solid lines when we can actually see that change in depth. So for example, looking straight down, we were able to see that you go off this tower and you go down a level onto the L. That's why there is a line here. We draw edges that we designate changes in depth that we can't see with a dashed line. So for example, if I'm looking at this thing straight on, what I'm really seeing is 2 blocks going straight up, that's my tower, and then part of my L sticking out over here. But the problem is, if I didn't draw this dashed line, I'd have no idea that this tower didn't go back forever. So I draw a dashed line here to show that there's a change of depth out of the range, out of the view that we're currently seeing straight on. So Then my right view, we've got the tower, which is here, shown here. Then you've got this one block that points forward, so we draw a solid line to show that there's a change of depth. And then we've got one block that goes back. We draw another solid line to show a change of depth. So that's my right view. You can see there's a little bit more complicated one down here. We've got another tower, a taller tower, a bigger L, and then a second tower. And you can see again that we've got some places that have solid lines, some places have dashed lines, but it all just depends. So let's take a look at this front view. So from the front view, I start off with my tower, which is this thing here, and that's designated in red. It goes 3 blocks up, so we draw 3 blocks up with a solid line because we can see that change of depth. Then my next plane across is this front block right here. He's here in green. Then I've got this plane here that kind of falls back a little bit. But then on top of that, back behind it, there's another little tower. Now here's where this diagram gets really interesting. Do you notice how we've got a solid line right here and a dashed line there? Well, we've got the solid line because that's from the change in depth of this green block coming forward. Whereas we've got a dashed line here because there's this tower that rises up, but it doesn't come across. It's not behind this last block. So we have to designate that. And when you're trying, if you could draw a solid line or a dotted line, solid always trumps dotted. So that's how we chose to use a dotted line there. Then we've got then we've got our top view. My top view, I've got the first, why did it do that? I've got the first tower that we started with, that's this guy. Then we've got our lovely L shape here, which again is here. And then we've got our second shorter tower there. So all solid lines because there's no hidden depth changes. And then finally there's the right view, and you can take a look for yourself to see the right view. Now I want you all to take a look at the figure I'm about to show you, and we're going to draw an an orthographic representation of it in these boxes below. Thank you all very much, and take a look at the MML assignment.